everyone. This is your host, Steve Kemp, with the People Not Titles podcast. And I'm so pleased to be at Baird Warner, Naperville, with just an exemplary broker that's been in the business for a long time, Frank Passaro. So Frank, we're so excited about having you on the podcast. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, I appreciate being here, Steve. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Frank's been in the business, second generation, since 1993. And he runs the entire Baird Warner property management arm and then he does just real estate, all over the Chicagoland and Collier counties, just a normal practice as well. So Frank, let's talk about this second generation. So it's in your DNA, or is that, how does it work?
It is. It has been.
Okay.
That way. I mean, my father started in 1973, and so he started me in that path. I remember being in high school and going and visiting clients with him around Christmas time.
Okay. So you knew what it took.
I knew what it took.
Yeah. And so where did you live around here?
Yes, I grew up in Naperville on the northeast side.
Okay. So you're homegrown here.
First. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so when you're watching your dad, so what was your career path like? You're watching your dad do it. Are you thinking this is what I want to do, or what attracted you to it?
It didn't start that way. So
Okay.
I went off to college. College wasn't for me.
Okay.
I was there for about a year and a half. The best thing that happened was I met my wife.
All right.
And so
So you met your wife in college.
Met my wife in college.
Fantastic.
And I remember when I was making that decision whether to stay or not, my grandfather played a big role in that decision. And he sat me down and he said, Frank, you have to make sure that you are ahead of all the people that are in college right now. You have to make sure by the time they get out that you've got that life and work experience that will counteract that education that you're not getting.
So what can you do if you're leaving after a year and a half? What can you do over the next 2.5 years that will set you ahead of the diploma?
Absolutely.
Right,
Absolutely.
and that's a great self-awareness, actually.
It was.
That, hey, this is not for me. I want to get into the action. Is that what you were kind of thinking?
That is it.
Okay.
Yes. And so at that time, you had to be 21 years of age to get your real estate license.
Okay.
I wasn't 21, so I couldn't do it. And so I went to work for a bank. I picked up a second job. I was doing my thing, and then when I was 20 years old, I started working for my father in the real estate business.
And what was the name of the brokerage at the time?
At the time, it was Century 21
Okay.
Team.
Okay.
It was in downtown Naperville, and
Okay.
I was what they called the client coordinator. So I was the one that fielded all the calls that came into the office of people that may have seen a house driving by, a sign, maybe they called in from a newspaper ad back in the day. And so I was the one that asked them a bunch of questions. And
Pre-qualified them?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
And then set them up with an agent in the office. And that was my role for about a year. And I did some other things at the office for some of the other agents, setting up systems for them and so forth, because I was waiting for that 21st birthday to hit.
Okay.
So I could take my exam and get my license and hit the ground running.
So Frank, it sounds like you're a serious-minded guy, and I could imagine what it was like. You seem like a smart guy, that to come home from college and it was the first conversation you had with your grandpa?
Oh, it was before I left college.
Okay.
Because I left, it was in, I think it was January.
Okay.
So it was over that Christmas break
Yep.
to say, hey, this is
not a fit for me.
This is not a fit for me
Yep.
as much as I want to. Yeah. And what are my other options? And so.
And was your dad kind of one of these guys like, hey, let's leave college, let's build a real estate dream together? Or was he more of an advocate for education? Just, a lot of people that watch a podcast are kind of on this career journey of what do I do? How do I start? They think everyone who has reached some level of success like you have in real estate is just kind of an easy, clear path. But it seems to me like there's always some crossroad moments where you have to make a tough call. And you're taking a risk to say, I'm going to give up that degree and all the promises that the degree has, and I'm gonna, now I'm gonna really expose myself and go, I gotta make something happen.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know, thinking back on it, I mean, I'm sure he wasn't thrilled.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
But I think that, he knew that college wasn't for me, and that, okay, it worked for him, so why wouldn't it work for my son?
Yeah.
So I don't have a definitive answer.
Yeah.
I'm kind of speculating.
But he wasn't like super negative, like, hey, go back, you're a loser, blah, blah, blah.
Right, because otherwise he wouldn't have taken me under his
Totally.
wing,
Yeah.
and gone that route.
And when you met your wife at college,
Yes.
did you think like, this is a girl I'm gonna marry?
Oh yeah.
Wow, good for you, man. That's great.
Oh yeah. So, and it's interesting because I got my real estate license and married within a 2-month period of time.
No kidding.
So
fantastic.
And I felt an obligation because here's a bright, intelligent woman that is putting all her eggs in my basket. Yeah. And I've got to come up and I've got to perform and
I love it, Frank.
Provide.
Yeah.
Provide.
Okay, and so all right, so you're working with Century 21. You passed your test on the first try.
No.
Okay.
It didn't happen, Steve.
Okay.
So now it's out there for the world. Okay?
That's great. I love it.
So,
yeah. This is great.
It didn't.
Yeah.
It took several tries.
Okay.
And part of the problem was I knew too much.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading into things.
Yeah, so how it really is done as opposed to how they want it to be done or the law says or whatever.
Absolutely. And I made the mistake first of taking the class at the College of DuPage.
Okay.
And so at the College of DuPage, they are teaching you like a college class.
Yeah.
For the theory, the knowledge. They're not teaching you to pass the test.
Yeah. Well, so Frank, I love this because, if you stop the snapshot there, you'd be like, what did this guy do?
Right.
He quit college. He's too young to get licensed. He got married. He's fumbling around. Took him multiple times. It sounds like my life story in many ways. But then, looking at not the end of the road because you're still building, you were then voted the top 40 under 40.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
For real estate.
Yes.
So, again, the beginning of the story is not the end of the story.
No.
Right? And and no one gets paid for passing the test on the first time.
No.
You know what I mean? It doesn't help you sell any more homes. They never check that. It's not in the listing descriptions to say, oh, I passed the test the first time.
Correct.
The test of life is much different than the brokerage test, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
So you get started, and are you with Century 21 now? You passed your test, 6, 7, 8 times? What did it take?
It took 3 times.
Hey, that's much less than I guessed, Frank.
It took 3 times. So, but it was a process, and I had to get my mind right and wrap around it, and nerve-wracking. I never was a good test taker.
Yeah.
And so.
And in some kids kind of hole up and my whole life is about taking this test, but you're working, making things happen, trying to sell home, or whatever you're doing. So this is this isn't your job to take the test, but your job is all these other things you had to get going.
Yeah.
And so when did you sell your first home? How old were you?
I was 21.
Okay, so you sold your first home pretty quickly after you got licensed?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
And did you leave the bank and all this kind of thing? Tell us about how that went.
Yes. Well, the bank was prior to my role as
Century 21 with your dad.
coordinator.
Yeah. Okay.
And then it was just a nice, easy transition into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do remember my very first transaction was with Jim Bresnahan. Longtime agent out of Remax in Downers Grove.
Is he still around?
No, unfortunately he's not.
Okay.
And it was a condominium that I had sold, and still one of the clients that I have today. Actually,
Amazing.
we've done a lot of business with the entire family.
That's awesome.
So it started from the one individual and grew to there's a big family. There's 6 of them, and so we have participated over the last 30 years in every transaction that the family has done since I started.
Wow, so what a journey that is, right? To know that the deals that you're doing today, if you have that vision, you're going to stay in the business. You're going to be doing their kids and
Correct.
On and on, and relatives and referrals and all the various things. So that's great.
And that was one of the nice things, with working with my father. He may have worked with the parents,
Mm-hmm.
well, now the kids were coming up the pike,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was a very easy transition to say, oh, well, here's my son.
Mm-hmm.
He could probably relate a little bit better to their situation.
So Frank, some people might look at it and go, oh, his dad was in the business, so it was easier for him, or whatever it is. But that's not always true either, is it?
No, it's not.
You still have to earn the trust of the client. They don't care about whose kid you are. They care about who they're dealing with. So what were some of the early struggles of sales that maybe surprised you?
I think the very first one was I had to overcome the age thing.
Mm-hmm.
Being 21, there weren't a lot of 21-year-olds in the real estate business in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I can't say it holds true now, but I got myself a pair of glasses that I wore all the time.
Okay.
Now I need them.
Yep.
But
Yep.
back in the day, I wore glasses to make myself look older. I had to make sure that my dress code was business-like and so forth. I always wore a tie and so forth. So, overcoming that age issue when the average age, and probably even still today, the average age is around 50 for a realtor. That was something to overcome.
Yeah, so it's one thing when you're experienced and seasoned and have clients under your belt and you have some moxie to dress how you want to, right? In some ways, but sometimes you have to dress how you have to, right?
Correct.
And so you adjust. That's great. And what was your days like? I mean, is it prospecting, hustling, improving? What was that?
It was a lot of, I was very fortunate because while my father was in the business, he had a lot of resources that I could tap. And what I mean by that is I spent some time with an attorney. I spent some time with a home inspector. I spent some time with an appraiser while I was waiting to get my license to learn those back end, those other people that contribute to the real estate transaction, so that I knew what their expectations were and how to make things go a little bit smoother. And then with the day-to-day activities, it was a lot of prospecting. It's a lot different now than it was then. We didn't have the do not call list.
Right.
So I was on the phone making calls as often as I could to various neighborhoods looking for sellers that wanted to sell.
Expired listings or whatever it was.
Whatever it took to do that.
Well, what's fascinating, Frank, is, okay, you have a person that looked at college and said, not for me, but then you became kind of a lifelong learner.
Absolutely.
Right, and that you immediately understood that educating myself is my responsibility, and you felt more comfortable educating yourself in your career than you did just kind of ambiguous things to learn, and hopefully it translates into something. I can totally identify with that.
Correct.
And were there self-improvement things that you did? Were there, talk to us about some of those early mentors that you had, whether it be, people in your life or these kind of, the Zig Ziglar, maybe Tom Hopkins, or whoever it is, that type of thing. What was important to you?
Sure. Well, certainly my grandfather.
Yes.
I relied on him for a lot of help as it related to, the vocabulary knowledge, real world experience. My father as well also played a huge factor.
Was your grandfather a broker?
No, he was not.
Okay, what profession?
He was an accountant by trade.
Okay.
And he had an ad agency that he did all the books for in downtown Chicago.
Okay.
But he took the train every day. His work ethic, no different than my father, is what I saw on a day-to-day basis with that. So it was, to get up, get dressed, and go to work. And then what?
So those are things that made an impression on you.
Correct. And then I also remember with Century 21, you mentioned like Zig Ziglar, Walter Stanford was a gentleman that I related to because he started his real estate career very young out in California, and he was a speaker at one of the events. I spent some time with him after that event, and I bought into some of the concepts, and that has added some structure to still even what we're doing today.
Yeah, so you find a model, or you find a there's different strokes for different folks, right? Some people have this kind of style, some people that kind of style, but there's somewhere out there that you can kind of identify with that says, okay, there's a little bit of a track for me to run on. That he did it, they're successful, he kind of blazed the path, and now I can do the same thing too. And it allows you to have some faith in the efforts. Yes. Right? Because you're like, okay, if I do this, I think I can get similar results. I might not be as good as him, or it might be this and that, but I at least can get those efforts. That's great. Were there mentors in your office too that took you under their wing, or was that just kind of learn what you could?
There were. I mean, I've been very fortunate in my real estate career that no matter which office or which company I have gone to, the amount of sharing and contributing, you pick up a little bit from everybody, so to speak. And it's being able to be open to that type of growth. You want to be a sponge. I wanted to take in as much information as I could. So maybe there was an agent that was very, very good at for sale by owners. Maybe there was another one that was good at open houses, or there was another one that was good at expired listings. And so if I got in touch with each one of those people and learned and said, okay, what are they doing? And then, okay, that's how they do it. I take that knowledge and then try to craft it so that it fits my style.
Make it your own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of different people that have helped. And not just the real estate brokers. I think a lot of the attorneys that we've come in contact with, home inspectors, you pick up the various things and you look at things from a little different perspective, and you go, okay, how can I make this transaction a little easier for my client? Oh, well, I had this experience with this home inspector, this is what they said. And it's just offering that advice or those tips to the buyer or to the seller, and that proves your knowledge, your expertise in the field.
That's excellent. So Frank, I having started in sales myself and kind of watching everyone's journey, you go from can I make a living, can I eat here, to can I build a life? Sure. And so talk a little bit about if that was some of your process, like hustle, I need to survive. And then when did you know this is what I'm going to be doing? Did you know it right from the beginning, or did it take you some time to get there to say, I think I can be good at this?
I think that it was inherently part of the DNA.
Okay.
And
so you didn't question yourself when you began.
I didn't question it at the beginning.
Just knew it was a matter of time.
It was a matter of time. The marketplace when I started was such. 30 years, I've seen it evolve into a lot of different things, and it's also being open to change. You have to think about, if the business is headed in this direction, am I going to be going with it? Yeah. Or am I going to fight it?
Right.
And
that's great.
It was those early years when you're starting your family, you maybe have children, and now you're responsible for other people as well, and you go, okay, wait a sec, I don't have a choice. I have to make this work one way or the other, because I have people counting on me.
Yeah, that's a big responsibility.
And so it's being able to say, okay, how it's not an ego thing.
Yeah.
It really isn't, because you have to be humble as well, because at some point in your life, you may need some help. You don't have all the answers. And the sooner that individuals can realize that and say, okay, maybe I need to be talking to this person who can help me in this arena, or talking to this person, and then taking that in, you may have a better outcome.
Yeah, knowing it all never helps. You never learn anything when you know it all, because there's no room for any additional knowledge or improvement.
Right, and it is. It's trying to stay grounded, and making sure that you don't become cocky or arrogant along those lines. And you also have to, I use the word I like to use with my agents and with my team is tact. You have to be very tactful with everything that you're saying so that it doesn't come across. It may not necessarily be what your intention is. Everything is how it's perceived by the other person.
Yeah. Frank, it's a fine line, because you're really in a business where you have to promote yourself a lot.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And you have to be confident in the things you can do. And so how do you mix that with humility, right? Because it's kind of like, Frank Passaro, agent, I can list your home, and my team is great, but oh, by the way, I'm here to serve, right? Because that's the
right. It's more about making is providing. I've always thought of myself as being a resource to people first, and a realtor second.
So the business comes as you put the towel over your arm and say, how can I help? How can I add value here?
Absolutely.
And then it's natural, as opposed to fighting and scrapping to get to the top of the heap.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you can help someone with something, and then it's going to come back to you at some point.
Yes.
Probably tenfold.
Yeah.
But it's making sure. I've never claimed to be the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that I had a good team around me, so they say, okay, you want to talk about wills or trusts, you want to talk about finances, these are the various people that you can go to. You need a carpeting person, here's my carpet guy.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure, because those people were a reflection of me as well, and if they had a good experience, Frank provided us with a great resource. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Frank, that the real estate brokerage world, you grew up here, you went to high school here, all kinds of people, it's family after family. You really have to protect your reputation, right? Because it isn't like you're selling in Omaha, and if you did a bad job or whatever, no one in your town knows, what does Frank do? Everyone knows what Frank does. Sure. And whether he's doing a good job. And so it's a big responsibility.
It is. It is. One of the things that my father taught me was, he said, look, your reputation is your key. The real estate community is how all of these transactions get done. And so, yes, we are supposed to treat our clients. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients as well. And I kind of look at it the same way with the real estate community. I need their cooperation in order to be able to get things done. I can't sell a house. I can't help a buyer without another agent's help in that transaction. And so I want to treat them with the respect and the professionalism that they deserve as well.
And you're going to probably see them again.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's a small market in some ways. So Frank, so at what point? So here we are at Baird Warner. You're a top 1%er here. So when did you choose to be a part of the Baird Warner? I think we're sitting in the #1 office.
Yes.
Not just in Naperville, maybe in Chicagoland. Just amazing numbers, and one of the most successful operations in real estate brokerage in the nation. When did you choose Baird Warner, and what was that process like for you?
Sure. So Century 21 was going through a transition. My father was one of the broker owners of the company, and they wanted to build a new office, and they were going to put it in downtown Naperville. That was the plan, and it ended up that it was going to be in a high-rise, and we were going to be on multiple floors. And I didn't see the benefit there. And
when was this? What year?
This was 2000. I think we moved in 2004 to the new facility.
And now having been in the real estate market at that time, it's roaring hot, right?
Yeah,
it's building up to
was.
really fever pitch at this point.
It was
right before the Big Short.
It was.
Yeah.
And so that was 2000. So probably about 2003.
Okay.
Even before that, 2002, because John Matthews, our regional head, John was managing this Naperville office
Okay.
at that time.
Okay.
And John actually was one of my neighbors.
Okay. He had his eye on you.
He lived down the street,
Okay.
and he would always come by when I was cutting my grass.
Yay.
And he says, "Why aren't you working?" I said, "Because I got all my stuff done." You know, and
That's
so, and being the son of a broker,
Yep.
sometimes people don't take you seriously when you're looking at other options. And so John was one of the few that did. And now it took him 2 years to recruit us over, but my father sold his interest in the business, and he said, "Frank," he says, "wherever you want to go," he said, "that's fine, we'll go there." And so I met with John several times. We talked about various things. It seemed like a very good place, and certainly I've been here ever since.
Wow.
And so I'm very appreciative that I had come in contact with John about our situation. And like I said, he was one that actually took me seriously.
And what did your dad, when your dad sold, did he retire or did he come with you?
He came with.
Wow.
So
okay.
he's still he'll be 77. They'll kill me for saying that. He's 77 in June. This will be his 50th year in the real estate business.
Wow, that's
and
amazing.
He's still going strong.
No kidding.
So
that's fantastic, right? And you think, you know, a lot of people get into something, you know, working hard to get out of it because they don't.
Sure.
But when you see somebody who's like, hey, maybe he could retire, maybe, you know, but he's a guy that says, no, you know, there's no retiring in me. I still have value to add.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's fantastic.
So I mean, so John brought us in 2004. Baird Warner has been a very good company for myself and my team.
Yep.
Steve Baird has, and Laura Ellis and Jennifer, they have allowed me to have various roles within the company, and that has helped with my growth. And so I'm very appreciative of that.
That's awesome.
And that's how the property management stuff.
Yeah, I want to get into that.
Started.
Yeah. So Frank, when you came here in the early 2000s, did you bring a team over, or were you an individual broker that all of a sudden then you then started saying, hey, I'd like to build a team, or when did that team mindset come in for you?
So the team mindset was very early on.
Okay.
That started in 1996 is when I started my team. It was the year my daughter was born. And so George Ailing was with Century 21 in Orland Park.
Okay.
And George, I met George at a conference, and he said, Frank, he says, you got to be looking at a team. He said, there's so many benefits to it. And I looked into it a little further. George's help, I was able to build that team. I started with an assistant, and then it grew from there. I had a buyer's agent, I got another agent, and when we came over, I'm trying to remember, in 2004, I think we had 6 people on the team. And some of it was family, but there was some connection to past clients as well.
Wow.
So my admin, who was with me for a long time, and she retired about 10 years ago. She was a client that I brought her in. One of my other assistants was one of my neighbors that I brought in. My aunt worked with me as a realtor as well. We brought her in. So there's always been some type of either family or client connection as to how the team started to grow.
So Frank, for an agent that's sitting there going, is the team right for me or not? And I know you've spoken a lot on this. What was the inspiration for you to say, hey, instead of me being an individual broker that's just going to be a contributor and a producer myself, I want to work with a team? Are you just a collaborative kind of guy, or what is it?
It is. I mean, it is a collaboration.
Yeah.
You know, it's having some satisfaction in seeing people grow and reaching their potential or reaching the goals that they've set forth for themselves.
Yeah. So some of them go off and become their own brokers and all that.
Sometimes that happens too.
You give them your blessing, and it's like that's a success story in many ways, right? You have to let that go.
It is.
That's great.
So, but that team, I mean, we try to when we talk to clients, it is about the team. It is not just about Frank or Frank and Tom.
Yeah.
It's about the Passaro team. And so if we list the property as a group, and if we are struggling, you know, we with that sale, or if the marketing's not going the way that we had hoped, well, we bring everybody together. We start talking about different things.
Kind of mastermind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To come up with a better solution.
Okay. So let's talk about, now you are, you know, not only the person who runs the property management arm of Baird Warner, but you're really kind of renowned in real estate in general, you know, at various organizations, Mainstreet or whatever, as a kind of a property management guru.
Yes.
And how did that, so what happened there? How did you kind of brand yourself that way?
Sure. So I've always done some form of property management since about 1998.
Okay.
And so I've rented property myself, and I was really only doing it for clients of ours. And I had a client that I had sold a piece of property to. They got transferred. The company wasn't helping him, and he said, "Frank, I'm going to be moving to Texas." He said, "We got to sell the townhouse." And I went over, did the numbers. They weren't going to work. He was going to have to bring a lot of money to the closing table. And he said, "Well, what are my options?" I said, "Well, how about renting a house?" And he said, "Well, okay, what does that look like?" So I went back to my father. He said, "Well, what does that look like?" He says, "Well, you can rent the house, no problem. You know, tenants all the time and so forth." And I went back to the client, and he said, "Well, that's great, but I'm going to be in Texas. What happens if something breaks?" So I went back to my father and I said,
if something breaks?
"What happens if something breaks? How do we do that?" He said, "Well, you can manage the property." Okay, what does that look like? And Tom had done some management over the years, and so we used that boilerplate agreement, and we started with that. And so I was maybe managing 6-7 properties for clients, just on a small scale. Well, in 2004, when we came over to Baird Warner, John Matthews said, "Well, we want to make sure that we preserve that business for you." So they made sure that we had all the accounts set up and so forth. And then it kind of grew from there. You know, John knew that
people had questions, whatever opportunities arose.
Yeah. John knew that we were doing it for our clients.
Yeah.
And he was hearing from other agents in the office, "Oh, my client wants to rent their house. They're going to be moving out of state." And John's like, "Well, I've got Frank. He can manage the property. What does that look like?" So I started doing it just for other agents here in the office. Fast forward, 2008, 2009, I left the residential sales brokerage and went to manage the Bolingbrook office for Baird Warner.
Okay.
And so I was there about a year and a half, came back. Oops, sorry, Steve.
Oh, good.
I came back, and I had hired a property manager at that time when I came back, because I was focused on the sales. I said, "We've got the property management, I'll have the gentleman do that." We got it up to about 36 properties. And that was then when the downturn in the marketplace was starting to happen. And all of a sudden I saw what was going on. I said, "Oh, we have to amp things up a little bit." I was an assistant manager here at Naperville, and I was trying to tweak where my role was going to go. 2011, I had a conversation with Laura Ellis. She said, "Frank, what would it look like if you started managing property for the entire company? What would that look like?" So we started working through that. Warren was involved with that, Habib. And then April 1st of 2012, we launched Baird Warner Property Management. We had 36 properties. And so it was really trying to get out there to the offices to share with them our experience, our knowledge, what services we could provide for their clients, making sure that the focus was all about client retention for Baird Warner. You know, we knew that if a client, since Baird Warner didn't do property management, if a client hired another company, well, more than likely they do real estate as well. So there was an opportunity for us to lose that business, and with our reputation, with our services that we provided, we just felt that it was another avenue that we could explore. And so we started with those 36 properties, and here we are today. We're approaching 375.
Amazing.
Which doesn't seem like a lot.
Yeah.
But again, it's based on that client retention, and so we lose a number of properties due to sales because our focus was mainly on those accidental or reluctant landlords.
Yeah.
Maybe they couldn't sell their house, or the numbers didn't work out for them, or maybe the market was such where they couldn't sell their property.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just needed to buy them some time, and they needed to move. So could we get someone in there that would pay that rent, that would help them pay their mortgage? And then when the market was right or their financial situation had improved, now we could bring them back into the sales arena and sell the property and accomplish the goal that the owner was looking for.
Wow.
And so last year we lost about 100 properties.
And lost means sold by,
Sold.
whatever, yeah. So those are all gains in some ways, but you lose them as part of the property management property role.
Absolutely. So 2022, we started with about 305 properties. We lost 100. And so now here we are sitting at about approaching 370.
Wow.
So that's the role that it plays. Would I love to see those numbers be even bigger? Of course.
Yes.
Should we be managing 500-600 properties? I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
We've grown organically.
Yep.
We're very, we want to make sure that it's a good fit with the owner as well. We just don't take every single property that comes to us.
Yeah, you're vetting these things out.
Yeah, just like we vet tenants, we try to vet owners to some capacity as well. And so it's worked out very, very well, and the marketplace changes. And so now we're starting to see, we have low inventory of sales. We also have low inventory of rentals as well.
Yeah.
So the prices are going up in both arenas. And so both businesses are still thriving.
That's awesome. Frank, it's a great example of really, kind of doing one thing well, then letting it naturally expand, like you used the word organic, and all of a sudden I'll take a property, I'll take 2, I'll take 3, I'll take 4, all of a sudden I have 300. It's kind of like they say the overnight success takes about 10 years. You know what I mean? So it's great to see that career path for you. So Frank, as you look into the future, just kind of wrap it up, what do you see for your, for your team and for the property management business? What's on the horizon?
I think that there's huge opportunity in both arenas. I have at this point in my career, I have put a little more emphasis on the property management side of things, and so I have the team, the Passaro team, to still focus on the sales aspect.
Because you do a ton of units every year, and you do a ton of business.
We've got a good customer base, and I don't want to lose that. We have built some great relationships, and so we want to keep that. So I'm still in the fray with that, but not as active as I would like to be. So I'm still trying to find some balance with that. Now with the property management side of things, it's really about education. It's really about educating brokers here at Baird Warner. It's about educating even the management at Baird Warner about what's going on in the rental world across our country. There are so many changes that have taken place really in the last 5 years, and we see that continuing even into the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so, again, trying to be that resource for people, that's where I think the value is going to come into play. And whatever comes of that, we're prepared to do. If that means that we jump to 500 properties, 600 properties, whatever that case is, I'm trying to make sure that our base is solid.
Yeah.
That's what I'm focusing on right now, is to make sure that we've got the right people in place, that we're spending the appropriate time educating ourselves on what's going on in the community and across the country so that we can better inform the people that need that help. These owners that are trying to make the decision whether they should sell their house or whether they should rent it. What's the end goal? You know, is it just about getting that quick cash? Is it about building wealth? Is it about establishing some type of a legacy for my family? It's all part of it.
There's a different answer for each one of those objectives.
Absolutely.
And Frank, and I see that with with COVID and all these things where people all of a sudden became squatters or what, I mean, there's all kinds of that happening. It's becoming more and more complex to the point where there's a real professional that's needed. You can't just say, oh, I'll do this kind of half-assed, and next thing you know, you're not getting the job done, right?
True.
Yeah.
True.
So leveraging someone that has property management experience, that kind of seen these things, that know the earmarks of a bad tenant or a good tenant and that kind of thing, that just can become invaluable in building your real estate business.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I look at, when we talk to owners, we're talking about calculated risk. Calculated risk. And what does that mean? You know, if a lot of the tenants that we deal with, they're looking for that second chance. You know, maybe, as you said, we're coming out of COVID, and so how many people were out of work during that time? How many people suffered financially during that time? And now they're starting to rebuild. Well, when we start talking to landlords about tenant situations, what's going to make that owner feel comfortable about taking on that tenant?
Because everyone has a story, and especially renters, if they could own, they would.
Sure.
And so there's a gap between being able to own and wanting to live somewhere and raise a family and do all those kind of things.
Absolutely.
And these are human beings that need a place to live and want to be a part of the community.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
So that's great. Well, Frank, I just want to say thank you. What a journey! I noticed that you're are you still the head of the softball here?
Yes. This will be our 21st year playing softball. We have a neighborhood. We have a subdivision league here in Naperville.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, this will be my last year as the commissioner of it. I'm turning over the reins.
Are you guys on the pitch clock as well, or no? You didn't implement that?
No pitch clock. Ours we use wooden bats.
Oh wow! Okay, that's old school right there.
You know, and it's 12 inch, so we're really trying to focus on the safety aspect of it.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of us are still trying to relive our
glory days. Yeah, and scratch the competitive itch, right? I mean, that's part of it. It's part of fun. So building into the community is also important to you.
Yes.
Well, Frank, I just want to say thanks a lot for taking the time out. I think that anyone who takes the time to listen to, what you have to say would find that and what is unique about the Passaro brand. I hear 30 years of a lot of experience, kind of been there, done that, yet with a great ambition still and energy to serve the community. So bravo to you. I see